Well, hello there. I'd like to just take a few moments of your time to review Madison's comprehensive plan update. By way of introduction, I am Tim Curtis. I am a consultant with Community Development Networks of Central Maine. And for the past 18 months, one of the projects that the town of Madison has contracted my services for is to do an update of the town's comprehensive plan. I'm pleased to say that this is the final copy of the comprehensive plan, and I'll have you take a closer look at that. This is about a 100-page document, and I'll spend a few moments just kind of going over some of the basics of this document. But the important thing to stress at this point is it has been approved, both on the state level. It's approved by the State Department of Planning, which is under the State Department of Forestry and Agriculture. And it has received state approval, and our approval letters are part of that document. But more importantly, it's received the approval of the residents of the town of Madison. At the recent town meeting on June 9th, residents voted to accept it and adopt it as the updates to the comprehensive plan. What is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is simply a roadmap, if you will, to guide future boards and committees as they make decisions regarding a whole range of issues. Housing, the local economy, the use of water, the use of natural resources, historical resources, farming and forestry, all those things that really play into what makes up all the components of your town. Those are the things that your local board of selectmen, your local planning board, your school board, all of these boards have to take into account when they make decisions. So having a comprehensive plan is a nice resource for all of these boards to utilize if they're looking for information to help kind of guide that decision. I'll give you some examples in just a few minutes. But to start, the most important component to the comprehensive plan as far as the state of Maine is concerned is what's called existing and future land use. And one of the things I brought this map here with me is to kind of point out certain districts that towns are separated into. This is kind of under the guidance of the state. And what you'll notice here on this map, it's color-coded, and there are several different sections that I'll allude to for a few minutes. But keep in mind, there's a difference between zoning and site review. The planning board with the town of Madison utilizes site review. They do not have a zoning ordinance in the town of Madison. And I think that's very important clarification to make. So by utilizing site review, a project that is done or a project that is proposed, whether it be by a local homeowner or whether it be by a business, that's going to alter some use of land in your property or some property in Madison, has to come before the planning board, has to be okayed and reviewed by our code enforcement officer, and the planning board reviews your site on a case-by-case basis, and they utilize things such as the comprehensive plan and other resources to determine, okay, is your project going to fit for the best use of that site? Now, that being said, to get a state-approved comprehensive plan, you have to utilize some guidelines here, and I'll refer to this map and some of the color coding on it, because this is probably the most significant part of the land use plan. This encompasses the entire town of Madison. You have the Cornville and Skowhegan line here, you have the Norridgewock line here, Solon on this side, and then of course the Kennebec River makes the border with our neighbor Anson. As you can see, most of that is white, and that white is not just an unknown section. That is actually a section where we call the rural district of Madison. And the rural district is open space, farmland, forested areas, and really that makes up 90% of the town of Madison. Now there are other districts that are kind of color-coded here. We have a small industrial district which runs right along the Kennebec River, and as you would imagine, that industrial district includes almost all of the almost all of the property owned by Madison Paper Industries, or UPM Madison. They are clearly the largest industrial business that we have in the town of Madison. We also have a downtown district, as many of you are familiar with, and that downtown district is that tiny little square right there, which is inside the Madison Village. Technically, our downtown district runs from about the junior high area of Madison down to the bridge by the Kennebec River. Now, there are village districts, and village districts are defined as places where there's medium to high density of residential homes. So there's a cluster of residential homes that aren't as spread out as they are in the rural district. And Madison actually has 3 village districts. We have one, which is the main village district, which is right along the Kennebec River, right around Madison's downtown. It's where all of our schools are located, and it's where the Madison Health Center is located. But also, as you come out to East Madison, there are 2 areas in East Madison that are also considered villages. One is considered the East Madison Village, which is over in this area on this side of the lake, and that encompasses the Lower Mills Road and the area where there's a lot of residential in the East Madison area. The third village area in Madison is the Lakewood area, and that encompasses a lot of the residential homes and almost all of those little camps and cottages around Lakewood Theater, Lakewood Golf Course, and the Lakewood Inn and Restaurant. So those would be the areas considered to be village areas in Madison. These lightly shaded yellow areas with the RR on them are considered to be rural residential. You're spread out a little bit more than you are in the village area where there's home right after home. But you're not quite as spread out as you are in some of the more rural farm and forestry land in town. So these areas are designated as rural residential. They could be on town sewer and water, but they could be, in most cases, on their own sewer and water. Commercial districts. The commercial district is probably considered this area right here as you come out White Schoolhouse Road and you get past the high school on White Schoolhouse or Route 148. And the main reason that that's probably considered a commercial district is you have some businesses out there. You also have the Madison Business Gateway, which is an industrial park which is designed to hold commercial businesses in that area. And then you have, finally, the last category is what's called highway commercial. And so a highway commercial district is just what it sounds. There's a place where there's businesses on a highway that will attract a lot of attention. And so where are Madison's highway commercial districts? Route 201 is primary our highway commercial districts. And you can see here this area is Clowes Corner, where there are several businesses that stretch down. Yonder Hill, Jellystone National Park is kind of over here in this area. And then you've got more highway commercial businesses as you move into the Skowhegan area and their highway commercial area. So that gives you kind of an idea of when the state looks at our comprehensive plan, they want to know, do we have an idea of where certain things should take place in Madison? And again, let me stress, this is not zoning. This is not saying that you can only do certain types of building in these shaded areas. It's used as a guide, and really it's a common sense guide. If you have some sort of industrial or commercial building, it would make sense that you would want to have it on a heavily traveled highway. That's one of the struggles that Madison has had with the Madison Business Park, is that it's a nice location, but it's not necessarily right on Route 201, which gets much more traffic. So a business that would look to locate in the Madison Industrial Park has to be a good fit where they don't need the amount of traffic that goes up and down Route 201. If you're going to build a camp, obviously you probably would not want to build a camp in an industrial area. You probably would not want to build a camp in a highway commercial area. You'd probably want to look for something where you have either rural or rural residential. So that's just really common sense planning that goes into this idea of utilizing a comprehensive plan. One of the things that we did was we looked back over the last 10 years to determine how much building has actually gone on within the borders of the town of Madison in the last 10 years. And it hasn't been significant. The national and local economy has been somewhat soft over the last 10 years, so you really haven't seen a building boom. But I think the numbers are fairly interesting. When you look at the number of single-family homes that were built in the last 10 years, there's been 112. So it's about a dozen homes a year are built. Where are most of those homes being built? They're being built in those rural and some of those rural residential areas. So of 112 residential homes that were built, 70% of them were built in these white areas or yellow areas where you would expect those homes to be built. How many mobile homes? That's single family homes was 112. Mobile homes, there were 90 mobile homes placed in the last 10 years. And the majority of those homes were placed right in what we consider the Madison Village District. And there's a couple of mobile home parks or places where there's a large cluster of mobile homes in that Madison Village District. So again, that would make sense. As far as businesses and the number of businesses that did construction, we probably saw about 10 businesses, so maybe one a year, a business that would actually build a commercial building. So that was occurring at about the rate of one per year. Now obviously if you go back 10 years, you're encompassing the construction of backyard farms, which is a significant commercial and agricultural investment here in the town of Madison, and that takes place in a rural area. Backyard Farms is right about in this area, not too far from the river off of River Road. And so, including Backyard Farms, you've seen about one commercial construction per year over the last 10 years in the town of Madison. One of the things that the comprehensive plan looks at is your local community services and facilities. Now that covers a wide range of things. Your local town government, public safety, police, fire, and ambulance, and schools. And I'll just take a few minutes to talk about this slide regarding the Madison school system, because if you've attended the Madison school board meetings or talked about the budget recently, you hear a lot of questions come up and people want to know, how many students attend our schools, and how does that compare to a few years ago? Because as you're looking at numbers, people are concerned if the numbers of students is decreasing or increasing, because they want to make sure that's reflected in the budget and the amount of money that taxpayers are spending for the education of their local students. The comprehensive plan has that information. This chart here that I'll be referring to shows the school enrollment for SAD 59, and there's a couple of specific years that are chosen. 1988, 1994, 2002, and then the last couple of years, 2012 and 2013, just to give you an idea. Now back in 1988, you would have included Madison Elementary, Madison Junior High, Madison High School, along with Athens Elementary and Starks Elementary. And so when you added up all of those, you'd have a total number of students of 1,266. Now that included 415 at the high school, 302 at the junior high, and 320 at the elementary school, 49 from Starks, and 180 over at Athens. You jump from 1988 to 1994, and there's been a significant decrease. Now the total number of students has gone from 1,266 to 1,078. You jump ahead another 8 years to 2002, and that decline is continuing even while you're still including all 5 schools in the district. It has gone down from 1,266, 1,078, down to 1,021 total students. The next slide, or the next column in 2012, shows another decrease down to 929 total students, but that has removed Starks Elementary, because by this time Starks Elementary is no longer part of SAD 59. And then when you look at the most current year, the 2013-2014 school year, you have not only Starks removed, but now you have the Athens school removed, as reflected from them removing themselves from SAD 59. So now you're looking just at all the schools within the borders of the town of Madison, and you have a total student population of 719. 259 at elementary, less than 200 at the junior high, and about 266 at the high school. Now these numbers are all based on what's called the October numbers, and so by October 1st of every school year, the school has to report its total number of students, and so that can be updated, and so it's compared to the October 1st numbers of each of those years. I think this is important information for people to know, and it helps people make informed decisions when they're approving things like school budgets, the number of teachers, the number of administrators that we need, the number of buildings and facilities that a school needs. And it's also a good gauge. Let's look at it in a couple years. Has there been an influx of people with school-aged children moving to Madison? And what can Madison do to encourage that sort of thing to happen to help grow our community? Just one more thing on the school system that you'll find in the comprehensive plan is the last 4 or 5 years of the graduation rates at Madison High School and where those students are going. And I think this is interesting because if you look at the number of students graduating, some people might find it to be frighteningly small. You look at 2009, your total graduates, 50 students, 2010, 60, 1163, then 58, then 64. So a graduating class around 60 students has become the norm at Madison High School. How many of those students plan to go on and attend 4-year colleges? And you can see that number runs right around 50%. How many plan to attend a 2-year college or get some maybe technical schooling? That number runs maybe right around 20%. How many plan to join the military? And then how many enter directly into the workforce? And you can see that varies by year to year. But information like this helps school boards, selectmen, concerned parents, teachers, administrators. It helps them all plan for the type of education they need to provide for students in the future. If you have a large majority of your students heading for college, then you want to direct your academics that way. If you have a large majority of your students, or at least a significant part, getting right into the workforce from high school, you want to offer those. And I believe that what you're seeing at the high school is a reaction to tracking numbers like this to see where are our students going. When you talk about the town of Madison, there is a whole section in the comprehensive plan that kind of talks about our local population. Our local population is currently just under 5,000 for the town of Madison. 2010 census numbers, 4,855. And that's up 300 from the same period in 2000, so 10 years before that. Where's the population of Madison heading? Well, there's a few numbers and a few studies that give us an indication. Obviously, just like most every other part of the state of Maine, Madison's population is aging. Currently, 25% of Madison's population is over the age of 60. So that's a quarter of the population that may or may not be in the workforce. And if they are in the workforce, they're working probably less hours and maybe making less money than people in that key demographic, which is usually 30 to 55. Keeping an eye on your population in your town, how many people do you have that are 30 to 55 is very, very important, because that's the core of your workforce. That is how much economic and consumer spending and earning is going on in that demographic of the population. And that demographic has gone down about 3 or 4% in the last 10 years as far as the number of people in the workforce, as the number over 60 is on the rise. Now, kind of going hand in hand with that is the number of our local residents that are either at or below the federal poverty level. The federal poverty level as of 2010 was a family of four that lived on less than $22,000 a year. And according to the statistics from the state, that makes up about 18.6% of the town of Madison. Now, that could be maybe some young single-parent homes that are struggling, but it also, you got to take into consideration how many seniors you have living in your community that may not be making money to the tune of more than $10,000 or $12,000 a year because that's their pension or Social Security. So when you have a high number of people over the age of 60 in your community, it's not surprising that you have a fairly large amount of people that are living at or below the poverty level. But how does this affect decisions that are made by local planning boards, boards of selectmen, folks that are in the medical field? All of this plays into what kind of businesses are going to be needed and necessary in our region. It's no surprise that some of the fastest growing and best paying jobs that require a little bit of schooling are in the medical field. Some of those jobs that are going to pay $10, $15, $20 an hour in the next 10 years are going to be medical related because of the nature of our population here in the state of Maine. What about housing? How does the fact that we have an aging population and an aging rural population, what do we do to make plans for future housing? Are there developers or developments that should be considered, and should the town encourage development of what we call affordable housing or senior housing, housing that is set up specifically for people of a certain age, and that it's affordable for folks to be able to pay for that type of housing? These are the types of decisions, these are the examples that decisions that are guided by information that's in the comprehensive plan. One of the last categories that's covered is what's called fiscal capacity. And I think that word in and of itself kind of turns people off because they don't really understand. I had to do quite a bit of research myself to get my hands around what it meant to have fiscal capacity in a town. But really, it's, do you have enough resources? Do you have enough money coming in to pay your bills? It's the same thing that you and I do on a home level every day. As we are trying to figure out, okay, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got taxes to pay, I've got insurance to pay, I've got food to buy, gas to buy, all these things. Do I have enough money coming in to pay for these things? And that's really what we look at as a town basis. And just like on a household basis, the more debt that you have, the more of a struggle it can be to make ends meet. So when we look at the fiscal capacity of a town, we look at how much money does it have coming in, how much money goes out, and what is their debt load. And in the town of Madison, you have some pretty encouraging figures, especially in regard to debt. Madison currently has little or no debt to carry, and I think that is helpful to put Madison in a good financial position. Now, it's not to say that Madison is not without its challenges as far as the money that is needed to be raised to pay for services. This chart here that I'm referring to now takes a look at the total budget figures that Madison taxpayers have to come up with every year. And this goes back to 2009, 2010. And as you can see, that budget has raised from $8 million to $8.4 million to $8.8 million. And you see the breakdown there. To raise $8.8 million means that we're covering $5.4 million to pay the town's portion of the school budget for SAD 59. You're paying $1 million, just over almost $1.1 million to cover the town's portion of the county budget. And then you're taking about $2.3 million to pay the town portion of what it takes to operate your municipal government, what it takes to pay your fire, your police, your ambulance, your administrative costs, all of those things that are associated with running the town's government. So you add those three things together, that gives you $8.8 million. That's what's needed to be raised from your taxes in order to cover all those costs. And we just went through this process recently in the months of May and June, as there are budget meetings and then town meetings to approve, and then there's actually a vote at the polls to approve the school budget and the town budget. So all these things work together, and they affect the amount of taxes that we pay in Madison. You'll hear a lot of conversation and discussion about the mill rate or the tax rate. And just as a point of clarification, when they refer to it as a mill rate, it has nothing to do with Madison paper. The word mill rate is really M-I-L, not M-I-L-L. Mill refers to 1,000. The tax rate is based on the dollars of taxes per $1,000 of the property that you own. So that's what mill rate is. And there's often a lot of confusion between the word mill rate and tax rate. They really mean the same thing. So this chart here shows how much that tax rate needs to be in order to cover the costs of operating the school, paying for our portion of the county, and operating our municipal government. As you can see, for the last 5 years, that tax rate has stayed pretty steady at around 16 to 17%. Currently, for the 2013-14 year, which just ended, our tax rate was 17.53. Now you see in that other column, the town valuation. That's another thing that plays an important part about what your taxes are. As that town valuation fluctuates, your tax rate also fluctuates in order to make sure you've got enough money coming in to pay all the bills. As you can see, in the last 5 years, the Madison town valuation has been steady at around $500 million. So basically, you take everybody's bit of property. You take your property and my property, Madison Paper's property, you add it all together, and it's valued at about $500 million. One of the big discussions that's been going on over the last couple of months in the town of Madison, as well as many other towns in the state of Maine that have close relationships with their local paper mills, is that paper mills are asking for an alteration in their valuation. In other words, they say, look, the paper industry isn't what it used to be. Our machines and our property and our buildings are not worth what they used to be. If we were to go to sell them, we wouldn't be able to get nearly as much as we are being taxed for. So just like every one of the residents has the same opportunity to come to the town, talk to the tax assessor, and say, I'd really like you to review my property to see if it's really worth as much as you're taxing me. Paper mills have started doing that with their towns, and Madison Paper is no exception. They have entered into conversations and negotiations with the locally elected Board of Assessors. And this is important to understand, that the tax rate is not set by the Board of Selectmen, it's not set by the Planning Board, it's not set by the School Board, it's not set by a vote of the voters. The tax rate is set by the Board of Assessors, which is a locally elected board of people. And they're guided by an executive director that works for not only the town of Madison, but several other towns to help guide them into making that decision process. So, you take a look at our town valuation of $500 million. Currently, Madison Paper's valuation is $220 million. So if you do the math real quick, you could see that Madison Paper makes up about 40% of the total town valuation. So if Madison Paper's valuation goes down, our total town valuation goes down. In order for us to cover the cost of that budget of $8.8 million, something's got to go up. And our town valuation is not going to go up if Madison Paper's valuation goes down. It's going down. So what's going up? Our tax rate will go up in order to cover those costs. There's some interesting information in the comprehensive plan that compares our tax rate with other tax rates of other areas in Maine. And this is important to understand, because if Madison's tax rate goes up to 20%, let's say for an example, yes, everybody will have to pay a few more dollars in taxes. But is that crazy? Is it outlandish? Well, it all depends on where you are in the state. And you take a look at this chart here, it shows the tax rate comparison. Now the data is a little bit older, it's back to 2012. It's hard to get this data quickly updated. But back in 2012, Madison's tax rate was just under 17, 16.9. Our neighbor Skowhegan, their tax rate was 16.4, pretty comparable. Our neighbor across the river, Anson, their tax rate was 19.2. Norridgewock, 15.8. Pittsfield, another town our size in Somerset County, about 18.5. Fairfield, a little bit larger and located closer to the Kennebec Valley area. Fairfield, their tax rate was 19.7. When you take a look at the state of Maine as a whole, overall the state of Maine's tax rate is much lower. It's about 12.8, but that's figuring in every community in the state of Maine. So now you're taking in what the tax rate is in Bar Harbor, what the tax rate is in Portland, what the tax rate is in Wiscasset, what the tax rate is in Holton, and you're averaging all those things together to come out with an average of about 12.8. So when you take a look at Madison's tax rate, keep in mind what are the other communities around us paying. There's been a lot of concern raised about how this tax rate will affect the real estate market in Madison. Will people choose not to move to Madison because they consider the tax rate to be high? Well, that's all in comparison to what the other tax rates are around us. For example, I was looking at the town of Bangor on their town website. Now, it's really apples and oranges to compare Madison to Bangor. Madison has a $5 million amount to cover from taxation for their school budget. Bangor has $50 million to cover from taxation for their school budget. But you know what the tax rate is in Bangor? It's 20.65. It's 20%. So it is something that taxpayers are always going to be concerned about, especially your larger landowners, farmers, businesses that own a lot of property that is taxed. Those are the people that really, they bear quite a bit of the burden when those tax rates go up. And so while you may not think it's a big deal, but you only got a home that's maybe on a postage stamp lot and you're only paying maybe a few $100s in taxes a year, sometimes those people that live out here in this rural area, they're taking that tax rate pretty seriously and they're watching it. And so I think it behooves the planning board, board of selectmen, school board, all these different boards to work together to make sure that those budgets are as lean as possible and that they are spending that taxpayer money as wisely as possible. The last thing I just wanted to talk about was really what a pleasure this whole process has been to develop this update to the comprehensive plan. It is available in hard copy. These copies are available at the town office. This document is also available online. Hopefully by the first part of July, a new and improved MadisonMaine.com website will be up. Currently, the website is being renewed and several of the pages are being refreshed and updated. And so in the new website, you'll be able to go on and click onto a page that covers the comprehensive plan, and you'd be able to download everything that's in this booklet in a PDF form. And I think you'll find the information very helpful. If you're ever looking for information on the town of Madison, this is certainly one of the first places that I would recommend that you look at is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was the result of a project that was done in a series of 10 meetings. These were called the Common Vision meetings. They were held the first Monday of the month, all throughout 2013. I'm pleased to say that this is not just something that one or two worked on, but over 80 individuals in the town of Madison gave contribution to the work that went into that comprehensive plan. So it really was a community effort and a community project. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to take some time on Now You Know and bring you up to date on Madison's comprehensive plan. And again, I'm Tim Curtis, consultant for economic and community development, and this has been Now You Know.